So in this episode, I will talk about, can you travel on an Australian aged pension? In this episode, I will share with you the 2 comments that were made, which is why I've decided to create this live stream for you. Here's comment number 1. I know for a fact you cannot travel OS for any length of time if you're on an Australian age pension, she said. And then another, I know you can't live OS on the Australian aged pension. I've done the figures, she said. Well, my name is Victoria Rose, and I'm here to share with you today how I did travel OS. One, that's probably the best way to put it, how I did travel OS on an Australian aged pension for a significant amount of time, much longer than the 6 weeks that people seem to think you have. Number 2, did I hide anything from the Australian government? And number 3, have I hidden anything from you? So let's have a look at how I travelled overseas. First of all, I left Australia in August 2018 and arrived back in Australia in December 2019, a total of 16 months. So that person, that woman who said, I know for a fact, does not know for a fact that you absolutely can travel overseas on a pension and stay overseas for a significant amount of time. Now, if you've got a story to share or questions to ask, then please ask that in the comment section. Go ahead and like my Over 60 Still Fabulous page if you haven't done so already. Overseas, I was in Italy. Actually, no, I was in Croatia. I met a great Australian couple who have retired. They have a little dog. How do they cope with all of the issues that are involved as far as the Schengen zone and as far as visas for staying overseas for an extended amount of time? Well, they cope really beautifully because what they do is they spend 3 months in Croatia. Croatia is not in the Schengen zone, but there is a visa requirement. So they can stay for 3 months in Croatia and then they travel over to Lucca in Italy. Italy is in the Schengen zone, so they can only stay 3 months in Italy. And that's what they do. I met many, many Australians who are traveling overseas, living in these countries. All you have to do is be aware of the requirements of the individual countries. Now, is there a thought that the Australian government will change that? Well, they're going to have an awful fight on their hands because there are a lot of Australians that are travelling and living OS for a number of reasons. For instance, one of those main reasons is with your Australian pension, you can live quite comfortably overseas. Let me give you that example. I earn the full pension. It's very difficult for me to stand here and tell you you can travel overseas and live on a full Australian pension because you have to pass 3 tests. The first test is your income/assets test. So I have at the moment very, very little income. Yep. So I passed the income test and I don't own a car. I don't own a house. I don't own any property. I don't have shares. I'm my asset. Okay, can we get that straight? So I passed that test really, really easy. The next test is the age test. On the 16th of August this year, put that in your diaries. On the 16th of August this year, I turned 70. So I absolutely passed the age test. And the third criteria to determine how much age pension you're eligible for is the residency income, or sorry, the residency test. I'm born and bred in Australia. I have lived overseas for 7 years. All the rest of my 63 years have been spent as a resident of Australia. So I had no issue with that either. That meant that when I travelled overseas, by the way, are you aware that I had no clue how long I would be away for when I first started traveling? No clue. Who does that? I had some friends actually tell me that I was not a normal person. Okay, so I'm glad that I'm not a normal person, because if I was someone that had a look at what everyone else was doing and listened to the fear that everyone else was sharing, then yeah, I probably would not have done what I did. But I'm not. I am a leader, an adventurer. I want to have a look at what else is on offer in our world. I do not want to go to my deathbed with the regret that because of fear, I did not do something that I actually wanted to do, because I am a traveler. So here I am earning the full pension. How much is the full pension, I hear you say? When I'm living in Australia, it's $933.40. That includes a supplementary payment, which you do not get when you are overseas, which is fair. It's around $60 a fortnight. Now, that $933.40 is a fortnightly payment. So, how did I live on that? Really easily. If I was not paying for accommodation, I was also very, very careful with how I traveled. There were times when I just had to fly, and mainly they're time restraints. Like for instance, when I traveled from France down to Spain to Algo Denali's, I took a 12-hour train ride, 12 hours going through the center of Spain. I was so excited. Oh, wow, all of the gorgeous scenery that I would see. And I didn't see gorgeous scenery. The center of Spain is nothing truly fantastic. But when I got to Algo Denali's, a joyful experience awaited me. So, from my $933.40 per fortnight, with no accommodation costs, no electricity costs, no water costs, and very little costs for my SIM card, because SIM cards OS, you would always get a local SIM card. There's no way that you would take your Australian mobile number with you and pay that. I think the cheapest is $5 Australian every day. So I didn't pay for accommodation costs, and a lot of the time I didn't pay for any food costs either. Having said that, food costs in most of the countries I stayed in was not a big expense. Sure, it was quite expensive in places like France and in the UK, and even Italy could turn out to be a tad expensive. Like everywhere though, you really had to pick and choose, where am I going to eat today? So that explains how I was able to live OS. So this covers that point where the woman said, I've done the figures. You can't live overseas on an Australian age pension? Well, you can. And I did it for 16 months. How can you find out what affects you? Well, you do need to do a check. A friend told me about her friend's friend. This person lives somewhere else in the world. And she does have a home in Australia. Now, she's gone in, she's done the right thing, she's checked that her individual requirements are passable, that would she lose her Australian pension? Because she doesn't want to do that, obviously. As long as she travels back to Australia once every year, then her home, which she rents out, will not be used and taken off her pension benefits. So she's quite happy to travel back to Australia at least once a year. You need, though, to check. It's so simple to find out. You check out, first of all, you go to the Australian Government Human Services site, and on that, you will go to find older Australians, and then under older Australians, you'll see a section that says overseas Australians. So check on that. It's quite illuminating. For instance, did you know, and you probably do, that there are a number of overseas countries that have an agreement with Australia for medical benefits, a reciprocal agreement. So you just need to check in, what is it that I can transfer over to the country that I intend to travel? Because I had no clue, apart from going to Turkey and Italy, I had no clue where I was going to go. And I never knew that I would actually be in Turkey for a whole 3 months. That's all I could stay there for, was the 3 months. But by 3 months, I was quite happy to leave. So that answers the first part. How did I live overseas totally on an Australian pension? Easily, easily. When you think about the costs that you have here in Australia, renting, mortgage, if you don't have either of those, then fabulous. You've planned well for your older years, and you're living very comfortably, I would suspect, if it's only the Australian pension. But are you? Here's what I found out. When I was overseas, I needed to prove that I could live on the Australian pension. So what I did was I meticulously noted every expense for every day. Now here's where you do lose money, and I haven't as yet calculated that into the overall figure, but that's the currency conversion. And when I do go overseas again, I have to find a better way. I've had a couple of great ideas from people that have suggested what they do. So I'll be looking at that, but I do know, for instance, that having to get my Australian dollars out of the hole in the wall, I paid premium dollars for that ability to actually do that. And I wasn't very happy about it at the time, but if you've been following me, you'll know that on day one of my adventure, I lost my Qantas cash card in the ATM. It just gobbled it up. And so that totally changed everything that I wanted to do as far as currency. So I paid for that in more ways than one. So there you have it. Point number one, please go, if you want to have a look at what you might get on an age pension and what the ramifications are of going OS, just go and check it out for yourself. Will the Australian government change it? Of course they will one day, but until they do, you can go for as long as you like. just to be upfront and let the Australian government, the Human Resources Department, know what your circumstances are. So that takes us to point 2. Did I hide from the government that I was going overseas? I'm not that kind of gal. I always stay within the letter of the law. My highest value in life is integrity. So there's no way that I would not let the Australian government know what I was doing. Now, having said that, I didn't actually call them before I left to let them know that I was leaving Australia, because I thought, no, they'll know from immigration. Immigration will inform them. But I did get a rap over the knuckles. Naughty girl, Victoria, you should have told us that you were going overseas. Anyway, the Immigration Department will let the Australian government know that you just left the country. And when you return to the country, the Immigration Department will let the Australian government know that you've returned. My recommendation is, and their recommendation is, that you actually let them know yourself. So, it's funny in our society, we seem to celebrate criminals. So it's sort of like glamorous, isn't it? Just go and rob a bank or do something underhanded, and we don't seem to penalise a lot of the criminals that we do have in our Australian society. Politicians come to mind, but this is not a political live stream, and I will struggle to not go there. The third point is, am I hiding something from you? Wow. The truth is that I am hiding something from you. What could it be? Here it is. Not only did I have to survive an Australian pension overseas, I also had to pay off credit card debt. I had to pay that. I did pay that. I do know there is a way to be excused of your credit card debt. Let's just put it that way. It's legal, it's within the law, but somehow, and this is only a personal opinion, somehow, especially when you're on a pension, somehow I'm thinking, you know what? I got that credit card debt, and I got it in good faith that I would always be able to pay it off. Well, I could not pay it off as quickly as I intended to. So that's the good news for you guys. That's what I've been hiding from you. Not only did I live overseas on an Australian pension, I also had to pay off credit card debt. What did that mean? That meant that in actuality, I lived overseas for 16 months on half of my Australian pension. I didn't know how I did that. So it's when you're here that you just think to yourself, how did I do that? And I'm awfully glad that I'm not in Asia right now, because my last 3 months I spent before I landed home in December, my last 3 months were in Asia, not in China, but still in Asia. All was fine then. I'm just kind of glad I'm not there now, although the coronavirus, whatever that will eventually end up being, it's not really located in one country. It might have started there, but it certainly is a global issue now. Well, thank you for joining me today. I've had so many people doubt that I have lived on an Australian pension OS, and even that I did it legally. I hope that I receive no more questions now saying, yeah, I don't know how you did it, but good luck anyway, you got away with it. I actually didn't get away with anything, and there are so many people, OS, who are Australians and are finding the way to live comfortably, because you can overseas on an Australian pension. Oh my gosh, I just love these sound effects. I know that you're loving them too. So it's time to go to my farewell video. I hope you enjoyed today. Go ahead and check out my YouTube channel. All you need to do is search for Victoria Rose Solo Travel. Please subscribe, ask questions. What questions do you have about my travels? How can I help you? Let me know. Bye.